Hari Om. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurme Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Our pranams to our Pujya Gurus, Adi Guru and the Guru Parampara. Team Vedanta welcomes you all. We are now into the 6th session of Panchadashi chapter 7. Hopefully you are reading Swamiji's PDF or listening to the audios or following up this satsang with some swadhyay. One might ask, why struggle understanding the Purva Pakshi's question and then the answer? They had not bothered us so far. Subconsciously, we are not able to swallow that the idea that I am that infinite Brahman. And these question answers will help us with that. Make us 100% established in our real nature, free from all doubts. Our worldly vasanas will be replaced by spiritual vasanas. That freedom which is already ours will be recognized soon. The notion of finitude will be dropped. Today, we will get a recap of last week's session by Anupama ma'am, followed by an introduction of today's verses by our teacher, Dr. Hegde, which is then followed by the presentations of all our speakers. First, the recap. Over to you, Dr. Anupama ma'am.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, a recap of verses 21 to 26. So we know that Vidyāraṇya Swami is commenting upon the Brihadaranyaka mantra 4.4.12. Atmanam che vijaniya ayam asmi iti. This means, I should know that I am this kutastha. How? Aparokṣataya. First, let's understand the meaning of two words, Parokṣa and aparokṣa. Aksha means sense organs. Para-aksha means outside the range of perception of these sense organs. And aparokṣa means extra-sensory. That means cannot be perceived by the sense organs. The mantra says, no atma as ayam asti iti aparokṣataya. Now, this statement appears ambiguous to a group of philosophers whom we call the Purva Pakshis. What are their doubts? First, how can there be ignorance or ajñānam with respect to something that is ever experienced, the kutastha? Second, if ajñāna of this kutastha is impossible, then its jñānam becomes irrelevant. Why? Because jñānam is removal of ajñānam. Third, how is it possible to have parokṣa jñānam of such an intimate thing like kutastha? It is not a remote object, and parokṣa jñāna is always remote objects. And finally, if parokṣa jñāna is not possible, then what is the need to introduce the term aparokṣa? Can't we just call it jñānam? That means the Purva Pakshi is saying that the words ajñāna, jñāna, aparokṣa, parokṣa are all irrelevant. Now, Vidyāraṇya Swami clears all these four doubts with just two words. He says, dashame yataha, just as in the case of the 10th man, referring to the well-known parable and its application in spiritual life. We all know the story of the 10th man as the ridiculously silly situation wherein a group of 10 people consistently exclude themselves while trying to confirm that no one is missing. This is a depiction of our extreme extroverted nature and is used by Vidyāraṇya Swami to explain our transition from ajñānam to tripti in 7 stages or avasthas. This is our spiritual journey. So I will refer to the 7 stages, intermixing the story with our spiritual journey. First is the stage of ajñānam. We are ignorant of our real nature. We are ignorant that we are Sat, Chit, Ananda. Second is avarna. What is avarna? This is expressed ignorance. See, both are untrue. Just like the 10th man, the jiva thinks that there is no atma, and we cannot experience the atma, just as the 10th man thought the 10th man who is himself missing and he cannot be experienced. And the phrase na asti na bhati, not existent, not experienced. This is a state of chidabhasa predominance. The truth being, not only does the 10th man or kutastha exist, but it is always experienced. Third is the stage of vikshepa. This is the activation of the vikshepa shakti of ajñāna. Ajñāna krita vikshepa, a projection of emotions like fear, grief, fantasies. This is samsara. The fourth is parokṣa jñānam. By some chance, you get the indirect knowledge from a person, an apta mitra, a trustworthy person. In the case of a story, the trustworthy person says 10th man exists. In our spiritual journey, a guru comes and tells us the kutastha does exist somewhere. Dashamaha asti, kutastaha asti. And finally, the aparokṣa jñāna. This is a direct realization, the revelation of the 10th man, or in our case, the kutastha, not as something to be experienced elsewhere, but as ourselves. Tattvam asi. This is a mahavakya. Dashamaha asmi, kutastaha asmi. What is the result? The notion of na bhati na asti is dropped. There is an awareness of aham asmi. The 10th man, and in our case, the kutastha, is now experienced by whom? By the 10th man himself, or in our case, by ourselves. How? Directly as ever experienced. Vedanta gives us a series of prakriyas that culminate in a sudden, direct awakening. It's something like a veil just falling off the face, the eyes, with the realization that I am the kutastha. Like in the story, the man would say, oh, I am the 10th man. This leads us to intuitively grasp, ayam asmi iti. What are the effects of this aparokṣa jñānam? First, there is a freedom of sorrow, dukkha nivritti, and very simultaneously, spontaneously, and effortlessly, there is tripti, a contentment, bliss. There is one doubt now. Do these avasthas belong to the chit or chidabhasa? Chidabhasasya ima sapta avasthaha santi. Certainly to the chidabhasa. Chit is only the sakshi of all these avasthas. Now we see that there is a unique technique of Vedantic pedagogy. There is no inculcation of fear anywhere. There is no preaching of faith or bhakti. There is no need to surrender to any higher order of reality. There is no waiting for any mystical experience. The Guru not only tells us about the kutastha, but reveals to us directly, ayam asmi iti aparokṣatva. There is nothing left to teach after that. Here, it is more of a transmission of information, and it is a realization, a kind of transformation. In reality, we are all dashamas. We are the jivas, being chidabhasa predominant, getting absorbed in worldly affairs, samsara, being kartas, bhoktas. As Vedantic students, we should become kutastha predominant. Do tiraskara of chidabhasa. This elevates us to the akarta abhokta status, from sadhaka to siddha, from dukkha to nir-ankusha. That a beautiful word. Nir-ankusha means nir-upadika tripti. Upadi is an instrument. It could be from Maya. We can do away with what Maya has given us, our body, our mind. This is a tripti that comes from within us, and we become Atmane eva Atmana tushta. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anupama, for giving us a wonderful recap of the verses we studied in the last class. 1 or 2 minutes is available for discussion. Anybody has any questions? I'm ready to take any questions on this point. If there are no questions, we proceed.
Sir,
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
you know, I was reading about the spontaneity of between 6 and 7, and also the first and the second. So I was not sure if it's really spontaneous, or because somewhere in the notes, I can't remember where Swamiji says they're not spontaneous. Anupama, you read it? The 6 and 7, the spontaneity of 6 and 7.
Yes, I'll tell you, Neetha, can dukkha and sukha coexist?
No.
They come together.
No.
Neetha, if I have to give emphasis, let us remember we are all in stage 4. We have to come to the stage of jnanam because of the presence of the Guru. We are blessed. We need to move from stage 4 to stage 5.
Okay.
And once we move from stage 2 to stage 5, the rest is academic about shoka, nivritti, tripti. So those things will happen automatically. Now, very nice that you raise these questions, because whenever you raise these questions, you make us think. So that's why at the end of each session, if nobody raises, I will ask you or Vasumati to raise a question so that we are on in the same page. If you will,
it's intellectual more than anything else.
that's true. Very true. Intellectual questions also are important, because unless the intellect is convinced, we are not able to digest it. We are not able to consume this information. So for those people, all of us who are blessed with intellect, unless we are intellectually convinced, if there is a doubt nurturing in your heart, that doubt has to be addressed. That is the purpose of this satsanga. And in this satsanga, we will make our own efforts to address even these intellectual doubts, because ultimately it is the intellect that has to be convinced. It is the Vidyāraṇya kosha in all of us that needs to be convinced. Once the Vidyāraṇya kosha is convinced, then you discover that you are already that. So let me proceed. Sadashiva samarambham Shankaracharya madhyamam Asmadacharya paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. This is a song of a tripti. And you see Deepa, this is also tripti Deepa. Whenever Swami Anubhavananda ji begins any of his talks, he plays this Maha Mantra. And I will read this slowly, and I want you to meditate on each of these words. Life is time pass. Kya farak padta hai? Koi dikkat nahi, pata nahi. Jo tari rai, so nari rai. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. Dekho, suno, mat bolo. Wherever you are, whenever you are, whatever you are, be 100%. Har natak. Kisi ko aao mat kaho, kisi ko jao mat kaho. Na kuchu pana, na kuchu khona. Who asked you? Live at zero complaint level. Mauj mein raho, be happy. And for emphasis again, be happy. Now, what is the reaction for all the busy people in the world when you hear this? And say, yeah, it sounds very good. It's okay for a sannyasi, but you should know the kind of lives we lead. And what impresses most of us? These phrases. These woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Now, this is our life. Why we are predominantly rajasic. There is that karta in me, and because there is a karta in me, there is also a bhokta. Mentally, even as you're sitting in this class, you'll be thinking, oh, I have so much to do. 24 hours is not enough. And if anybody, you encourage them into the world of spirituality, these slightly tell you, you know, I have accomplished so much, my time is so precious. No, we don't have time for all these things. They sort of consider that what we are doing is a little bit of a waste of our time. Fortunately, the Guru has come into our lives, and we have seen this in the Mundaka Upanishad, this very beautiful 12th mantra, which says, Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan Brahmana. Those of us who have examined our lives and who have seen, what is that I have accomplished? Nirvedyam nāsti akrita kritena. One realization comes that with any amount of finite effort, the infinite cannot be attained. And what is the human craving? I want to be bigger than the best. I want to be infinite. Tad vijñāsa gurumeva abhigachet samit pani shrotre brahmanishta. So with samit pani, I come 180 degrees back, just like a river taking a U-turn back to the source. And that is how we have come to the Guru. As we study Tripti Deepa, remember, if we have to progress from stage 4 of spiritual evolution to stage 5, one thing we have to work on is that is sport. The more we have possessions, we are possessed by what we have. The more obligations give us less time for spirituality. All our relationships, however intense and dear, they are all mithya. Our transactions necessarily have to come down, because when you are by yourself, if you have a lot of transactions, your mind is not going to be on the now. Your mind is going to be on what next I have to do. So let us come to this chapter, which is helping us to move from Parokṣa jñāna. I have Brahma Vidya. I know all that. But can I move from Brahma Asti to Brahma Asmi? Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambu Janmani Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Graseka Karmani Atmanam Chid Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purushaha Kim Nichan Kasya Kamaya Shariram Anuswam Jware. We have seen in Dr. Anupama's presentation the 7 stages, beginning with ajñānam, unexpressed ignorance, then comes to the stage of avarna. Avarna means, although I am already that Brahma Tattva, that Atma Tattva is covered. In today's class, you will touch on 2 more terms. We have many speakers who will be touching on them, so I will not emphasize. I will only emphasize them to be very attentive when they talk of what is this sattva-āvaraṇa and what is bhāna-āvaraṇa. That I am existent is being covered. And when there is the covering of the existent part of me, that is called sattva-āvaraṇa. That I am conscious. That also I am not aware. That is called bhāna-āvaraṇa. And slowly you will go into deeper dimensions when this sort of uncovering happens. And when this uncovering happens, you will realize there are 2 forms of coverings. One is called sattva-āvaraṇa and the other is called bhāna-āvaraṇa. Because of my ignorance, I have a misconception. I think I am the limited individual, and therefore I have avidya, kama, karma, and the cycle goes on. The first 3 levels have been classified as bandha hetu. The first 3 levels are the cause of my bondage. But we have come to level 4. We are on the hetu. That means we are on using the module that will help us to come to moksha. Parokṣa jñānam. That means through avantara vakya, through the Gita, through the Upanishad, I get to know and I'm convinced that Brahman exists. Now, through aparokṣatva jñānam, through mahavakya, I will come to realize what the teacher is talking about, not about some Brahman, but something that I have always experienced. The fact that this consciousness in me, and the fact that there is something in me which has been the same ever since I remember. Focus on the word I am. Today you will learn about Aparokṣataya also of two types. That is another new term that you have to learn to pick up in each of these classes. What is this self-evident aparokṣataya? Just like the 10th man did not know he was the 10th man or the 10th man all along. So even though I am the 10th man, that knowledge is not going to be this, is not going to help me. It is only the understood when the teacher directs you to say you are that and directs you to that Atma Tattva within you, that understood aparokṣataya is what we really need to pick up in our journey from 4 to 5. Then, of course, all the sorrow is gone. Then we come to Purnatvam or Tripti. We have Venkatesh Prasad, who will give us the opening 2 verses. Venkatesh, please.
Thank you, sir. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The subject matter of entire 7th chapter called Tripti Deepa is one mantra from Vidyāraṇya Upanishad. Swami Vidyāraṇya begins this chapter with that mantra 4.4.12, and the following 297 shlokas revolve around this shloka, which says, Chet Purushaha Atmanam Ayamasmi iti Vijaniyat Kimichan Kasya Kamaya Shariram Anusamjvaret. The study of this chapter, Tripti Deepa, is the process of that realization, a journey from Brahma Asti to Aham Brahma Asmi, passing through 7 stages from Ajnana to Tripti, using the example of 10th man story. Next slide, sir. We have traveled 36 shlokas in our quest for this self-realization. We heard about the first 2 avasthas, Ajnana and Avarna, in shloka 35 and 36, presented by Srimati Rama Madam in the previous session. Let's go to the 3rd avastha, that is Vikshepa, in shloka 37, which reads as under. Dehadvaya chidabhasa rupo vikshepa iritaha kartrutvadyākhila shlokaha samsārakyosya bandhaka. Swami Vidyāraṇya discusses 7 avasthas 3 times, and this is the 3rd time. And he is discussing Vikshepa for the 2nd time, but chooses to deviate slightly in its definition. Next slide, sir. Way back in shloka 30, he had defined this Vikshepa as Karta Bhokta Ahamasmi iti Vikshepam Pratipadyate, 7.30. Here, in 2nd line, he says, Kartrutvadi Akhila Shokaha Bandhakaha Samsaraskya Vikshepaha, Samsarakya Vikshepaha. Here in verse 7.37, he says, Kartrutvadi, all the struggles in the form of Kartrutva, like I am a Karta, I am Bhokta, etc. Once Kartrutva comes, Bhoktritva follows, and Jiva enters all the struggles. Kartrutva is a pain in the form of duties, and Bhoktritva is in the form of Anubhava. And this Shoka is the shackle or bondage for the Jiva, and it is known by the name Samsara. The Karta Bhokta is a 3rd stage, Vikshepa. Until here, there is no problem, as both definitions are on the same lines. Next slide, sir. But in the 1st line, Vidyāraṇya says the 2 bodies, the physical and subtle, Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness, and the reflecting medium also falls under the Vikshepa only. Dehadvaya sahita Chidabhasa rupa Vikshepaha iritaha. Because they are mithya, Vidyāraṇya includes them in the Vikshepa. It is a projection caused by Ajnana. When the world is caused by Ajnana, what to talk of body, mind, and reflected consciousness? They are also Vikshepa only. This addition creates a problem. Parokṣa waits to attack. In shloka 38 and 39, Vidyāraṇya convincingly answers Parokṣa's doubts that how can Chidabhasa, which came into the picture in the 3rd stage, claim ownership of first 2 stages, Ajnana and Avarna. He says Chidabhasa existed in unmanifest form as Karana Sharira even before Shariradvaya were born. As such, it is Anadi. So, Ajnana and Avritti do not belong to projected Chidabhasa, but they belong to potential Chidabhasa. Shloka 40 answers 2 questions that to whom does Ajnana belongs to, whether Chit or Chidabhasa. And the 2nd question is, Chidabhasa has only 5 stages, which excludes the first 2. Vidyāraṇya says, Ajnana belongs to Jiva or Chidabhasa under Vishesha Ashraya and to Chit under Samaya Ashraya. He goes on to declare Chidabhasa existed in seed form as Prajna Rupa Chidabhasa even during the first 2 stages, and hence in all is there in all 7 stages. Shloka 41, we see Purapakshi allotting the first 2 avasthas, Ajnana and Avarna, to Brahman and remaining 5 to Jiva. He attributes his reasoning to the claims of Jiva in all those 5 avasthas, and Brahman is the adhisthana of earlier 2 avasthas. Vidyāraṇya brilliantly responds in 42nd shloka. He says, if claiming is the criteria, then it is the Jiva, and Jiva alone who claims he is Ajnani, and he is unaware of Kutastha. So, Jiva is the logical owner of all 7 avasthas. Shloka 43 is purely a technical discussion amongst the wise. The topic of discussion is whether Ajnana belongs to Brahman or Jiva. Vidyāraṇya says both are right. Brahman is the locus of Samaya Ashraya or Adhisthana Rupa Ashraya, and Jiva is also the locus as Vishesha Ashraya or Abhimana Rupa Ashraya. Next slide, sir. That brings us to Shloka 44, which will take us to next 2 avasthas, Parokṣa and Parokṣajnana and Aparokṣatva. Jnanadvayena nashtesmin ajnane tatkritavrihi nabhati nāsti chetyesha dvividhapi vinashyati. Until now, Vidyāraṇya has pointed out that the first 3 avasthas fall under Bandhaka avastha and belong to Jiva only. Hereafter, he wants to show the last 4 put together are called Moksha avastha. They are Parokṣajnana, Aparokṣajnana, Shokanivritti, and Tripti. Parokṣajnana and Aparokṣajnana, the 4th and 5th stages, have 2-fold functions. Next slide, sir. Previously, while talking about the 2nd stage, he mentioned that avarna is 2-fold. One is Brahman, is non-existent, since the existence of Brahman is concealed, which is sattva-āvaraṇa. Brahman may be in existence, but Brahman is not existent for me, and this concealment of experience of Brahman is called bhāna-āvaraṇa. Next slide, sir. He says, Parokṣa jñāna removes sattva-āvaraṇa. There is Brahman, Brahma Asti is Parokṣa jñāna. The scriptures tell me that Brahman is there, so I know Brahman is there. I will never say Brahman is non-existent. The non-existent part is negated by Parokṣa jñāna. Then the Jiva says, I know Brahman, but I have no Brahma Anubhava. Now that experience is covered. He says that covering of Brahman experience is called Bhana-āvaraṇa. This avarna goes by aparokṣa, that is, I am Brahman, aham Brahma Asmi. Sattva-āvaraṇa says Brahman is not there, and Bhana-āvaraṇa says Brahman experience is not there. Both of them go away on gaining self-confidence. That is self-knowledge. That is the benefit of 4th and 5th state of Parokṣa and Aparokṣa. All these come under Moksha avasthas. Dr. Divakar is going to elaborate on this. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venkatesh Prasad, for a nice explanation, particularly bringing in 2 new terms, sattva-āvaraṇa and bhāna-āvaraṇa. Now, I'll leave it open for people to ask any questions or any clarifications. Whenever there is an intense silence, and I will request you to be very silent, continue to be silent. You become sensitive to whatever sounds that you are hearing. Ask yourself, who's the one that is listening? Who is the experiencer? The awareness of the experiencer is removal of bhāna-āvaraṇa. Removal of bhāna-āvaraṇa is the understanding that what I need to discover as myself is that listener, that consciousness principle. Also, I am existent. I don't need anybody to prove my existence. That conviction is the removal of sattva-āvaraṇa, But if anybody has any questions, Venkatesh Prasad has done a lot of work. Venkatesh will answer. Or any one of us Purva Pakshis can raise a question to bring in our discussion. If there are no questions, and we will proceed with our next speaker, Dr. Divakar, please.
Thank you, sir. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We have seen the 10th man story and the 7 steps of the spiritual evolution mentioned in Tripti Deepa. The whole of Tripti Deepa is the in-depth analysis of these 7 steps. And this chapter, Panchadashi, alone is more than sufficient to realize our innate status of Jivan Mukti, as Swami Vidyāraṇya systematically presents the cryptic Atma Jnana and dispels any doubts through his masterly logical analysis. Thanks to all the gurus who make this advanced knowledge a lot more easier for all of us. We have seen the 7 stages, 7 steps of spiritual evolution, starting from Ajnana till Tripti. As sir has already mentioned, the first 3, Ajnana, Avarna and Vikshepa, are called as Bandha Hetu. Hetu means the cause. Bandha Hetu is the cause for bondage. Then Parokṣa Jnanam and Aparokṣa Jnanam is called Moksha Hetu, the means for liberation. And then finally, Shoka Nivritti and Tripti are the Phalam, or the final outcome of this spiritual journey. In the next slide, we see. Let's quickly look at a bit of a recap on what's been told already. Bandha Hetu, Ajnanam, Avaranam, and Vikshepa. We know that all 3 are interrelated. Ajnanam is the self-ignorance and is also called as avidya. Avidya is the Maya at the individual level, that is represented through Karana Sharira. So at the cosmic level, it is Maya, and at the individual level, Jiva level, it is avidya or Ajnanam. We also know that Maya or avidya has 2 properties, or let's call that as traits. They are avarna, the veiling property, and vikshepa, the projecting power. So avidya or ajnanam is equals to avarana plus vikshepa. If avidya is the whole coin, avarana is one side of it and vikshepa is the other side of the same coin. Next slide, sir. Okay, avidya or ajnana, the self-ignorance, because of its avarana shakti, covers our true nature, which is kutastha, the all-pervading and sentient Brahman or Atma. This avarana, as told already, is of 2 types. The first one is covering of the Asti aspect of the Brahman. In other words, even the knowledge of the existence of Brahman is not there. So Ajnani will say Brahman doesn't exist. Brahman na asti, Brahman nāsti. And this is also called as sattva-āvaraṇa. Then the second aspect of avarna is na bhati or abhana. Both of them are the same, both of them convey the same meaning. Meaning the experiential aspect of the Brahman is covered. This is the inability to appreciate the awareness principle in every experience. We know that Atma or Brahman is not an object of experience, but it is the very subject or the original experiencer, or every experience in us is only because of this original experiencer or the Brahman. We can already see that the nabhati, the inability to experience the awareness aspect of Brahman, is more subtler and a difficult aspect to grasp. And then dispelling this is a real tough task. This is where most of the students of Vedanta get stuck. And this is a challenge. Next slide, sir. It is relatively easy to dispel the first aspect, which is na asti of avarana. As we all are going through Shravanam, Mananam of Shastras, through gurus, which help us dispel this na asti aspect of the avarana. But na bhati of avarana needs individual effort, the contemplation. And this is the journey from Brahman Asti to Brahman Asmi. What about Vikshepa, which is the projection or sometimes called as superimposition or adhyasa, which is also because of avarana itself. Taking a rope snake example, not having the knowledge of rope is ajnana. Then misinterpreting the rope as a snake is avarna. In other words, covering of the rope with our interpretation as a snake, and then because of this avarna, getting anxious and worried about the perceived snake and suffering from that is vikshepa. Non-recognition of the rope is the cause for the superimposition of the snake, leading to the fear. So, non-recognition of kutastha atma is the cause, and falsely identifying with superimposed body-mind will lead to the effect called as samsara. The next slide we see. The previous verse, Venkateshji has beautifully explained about jnana-dvaya. This jnana-dvaya is needed to destroy these two kinds of avarna. This twofold avarna are atma na asti, atma doesn't exist, and na bhati, it doesn't appear or it can't be experienced. This twofold knowledge, jnana-dvaya, destroys twofold avarna, but not vikshepa. The reason being, removal of the veil, the avarna will automatically remove the vikshepa. On realizing that it is a rope, avarna of snake superimposition is gone automatically, and therefore vikshepa of anxiety related to the perceived snake is gone as soon as we see the rope. In the next slide we see the verse 45. Parokṣa jñānato nashyet sattva vritti hetuta aparokṣa jñānanāsha bhana vritti hetuta. Indirect knowledge, atma jnanam, that we get from shastras and guru and through satsangs like this one is parokṣa jnanam. This indirect knowledge removes the first stage of avarana called as sattva-āvraṇa or atma na asti. Means we understand that Brahman or kutastha atma is asti, it is there. So we begin to accept this sat, the pure existence or isness principle of Brahman. It's worth repeating that Sat, Chit and Ananda are synonyms of Brahman. How do we know that Sat exists? Because Shastras, which are authoritative, makes this abundantly clear to us. And we are using Shastra Pramana. Until this, most of the spiritual seekers are very comfortable with. Then the next line, aparokṣatva bhāna-āvraṇa. Bhana is Atma doesn't appear. Bhana is removal of the notion that Atma doesn't appear. This is double negative like the previous line. Aparokṣa or the direct knowledge destroys the second aspect of avarna, which is bhāna-āvraṇa or nabhati. The first step through parokṣa jñāna, the covering of Atma's existence is removed. We understand that the superimposition of our body mind on Atma is removed, and we can accept that Atma or Brahman is Asti. And through the second step, through direct knowledge, this the aparokṣa jñāna, we not only say that the unlimited consciousness exists, we not only say that the Brahman exists, we also start claiming that that Brahman is me. Aham Brahma Asmi. Through Mahavakya of Tattvamasi of Guru, we start to say Aham Brahma Asmi. That is aparokṣa jñāna. So the personal discovery that I am that through contemplative inquiry, that is that which removes the second aspect of the avarana, which is nabhati. If we think that the limitless unchanging consciousness doesn't exist, it only means that coverings of ignorance is at play. Ajnanam is still playing. But with inquiry, with vichara, if we analyze, then we can understand that the very experience of everything is only possible because of the limitless unchanging Brahman. This awareness and identification with Brahman through all of our experiences is aparokṣa jñānam, which removes the subtlest nabhati aspect of avarana. This asti to asmi becomes very clear to us. So the verses 44 and 45 completes the discussion on moksha hetu, the parokṣa and aparokṣa jñāna. In the next slide, we see the verse 46. Bhana-āvaraṇe nashte jivatva-ropa saṅkṣayāt kartutvad-akila śyokaha samsārokhyo nivartate. This is getting into the specifics now. For our Vedantic information to become life-changing transformation, what we need to really work on is not the removal of vikshepa. It's not the removal of the first layer of avarna, which is sattva-āvaraṇa, but it is the second and the subtler layer of avarna, which is the removal of bhāna-āvaraṇa. Removal of the notion that Atma doesn't appear, can't be appreciated in our experience. With bhāna-āvaraṇa nashte, with aparokṣa jñānam, the direct claim of Atma as I am at all times through all our experiences. And this is pratibodha viditam matam. I, the experiencer, is there in every experience, be it our breath or blink of our eye. And this is the first person knowledge. If Atma is an indirect knowledge, as in Parokṣa jñānam, we call it as it, as if it is a third person knowledge. And this is the Parokṣa jñānam. Of course, it is necessary to know about Atma. This is through Shravanam Mananam. But it will still be academic and bookish knowledge only if we don't progress towards aparokṣa. If we get stuck at the academic parokṣa jñāna, knowing that Atma exists, then our emotional control will only limit to the time we spend in satsangs. And we sit, or if we sit for some meditative practices. The moment we face situations which stir up our emotions, be it traffic or any negative situations, and we react back to as per our conditioned previous responses of anger, anxiety, depression, etc. Even Vishyananda, the material happiness is also the same. We also experience like materialists if we limit ourselves to Parokṣa jñānam. So Parokṣa jñānam gives temporary ananda, like material pleasures. Only when Parokṣa jñānam becomes aparokṣa, that is, it becomes personal to us, then the body-mind identification drops and we anchor to the Kutastha Atma. Knowing about is Parokṣa, and who am I inquiry and leading to I am that is aparokṣa. This inquiry will instantly destroy the superimposition of body-mind, the jivatva on the Atma. Meaning our identity gets changed from limited body-mind to unlimited Atma. Jivatva aropa sankshayat. Aparokṣa's first person knowledge removes the false identification on body-mind. So what happens next? Until now, because I was saying I am this body and mind, then I was suffering because all the problems of the body, mind, and the world I was identifying with, and it was causing so much of emotional draining. But now the false identity of the limited suffering superimposed body mind is gone. This is Jivatva. Now with the new discovered real identity that I am the defectless Atma through self-inquiry, that's the last slide, sir. Through Abhana Nivritti Aparokṣa jñāna, it automatically removes the vikshepa or the sufferings belonging to the body and mind also. How? Because as Venkatesh ji has already told, kartatva, the doership, and the receivership, bhoktatva, belongs to the body mind. And because this kartatva bhava, shoka and samsara experienced will also be dropped. All the problems in the world, body, and the mind belongs to the world, body, and the mind, not me, the defectless Kutastha Atma. Just like how we instantly get relieved on switching a light and discovering that it is not a snake, but a rope. In fact, snake was never there. We are suffering, worrying about non-existent snake. We need to inquire using the aparokṣa jñāna to instantly destroy samsara and liberate. Thank you. Hari Om sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Divakar, for a very nice explanation. Because our whole journey is not just knowing about Brahman, but to be able to understand, as he said, pratibodha viditam. In every experience, can I come in touch with the experiencer? And that removes bhana-āvaraṇa, when the teacher points out to help you to discover the one who is the observer of all these things. We have 1 or 2 minutes for any questions that you may have for Dr. Divakar.
Namaste. So this snake rope illustration and the our body, mind that is superimposed on Atman. In the two examples or the two whatever situations, see there they are. In the case of snake rope, you don't experience the snake rope. Whereas in the case of body, mind superimposed on Atma, we are experiencing every moment. The sorrows and happy emotions we are all experiencing.
We are
So-
scared of snake, no, Rama? The snake makes us scared.
That's true.
Yeah.
We experience the snake and we're worried about the snake. We don't know about the rope. So the presence of the snake is causing all the problems, Ramaji. So in that example, I'm not sure if I got your question right. In the rope snake example, the real problem is that I take the rope to be the snake and I suffer its presence until somebody throws light on it.
Yeah.
Hari Om, I have a question.
Yes,
I'm Aruna here. Does merely knowing it, okay, we have understood it, but then how does it translate into becoming that? I mean, I know we don't become anything, it's always there. I understand all that. And I know that I'm not, I am the whatever, the Brahman and not the Jiva. But that transition is something I am not sure. Is it done by meditation? Is it done by, how does that come about? It's like that is my problem right now.
Aruna, you are in Tripti Deepa. Tripti Deepa, I promise you, your question will be addressed in some 40 verses. 40 verses will tell you on these things only. I know all that, but it has not made a difference. So your question is absolutely relevant. I jumped the gun before Dr. Divakar could answer. Dr. Divakar, please answer. It's your turn to answer, and then I will come over to add to what I want to say.
Yeah, sir, I think again it's the play of Maya. That's an academic answer. But as far as the individual effort is concerned, working on the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, whether the preparatory sadhanas are in order or not. Yes, academically we know why is that we are not able to proceed towards the next level. Sometimes we end up intellectualizing even that and saying my prarabdhas are not allowing. So my own karma phala is not allowing. But there is always some things that we could do in terms of elevating ourselves, uddhare atmanatmanam. So working on our own, sadhanas.
Certainly, there are two important steps. One is my own preparation for Vedanta, that is through sadhana chatushtaya sampanna. And Swamiji says, see, those who have done enough of upasana and who have done karma yoga, those people become much more easier for them. It becomes much more difficult. But later on, you will realize that your liberation, your freedom is independent of the state of your body, independent, more important, of your state of your mind. Really, it is the recognition. This recognition alone is the declaration that your journey is over and there is nothing else to do but a clear understanding of I am Kutastha Chaitanya. That is it. Then there will be a disparity. What kind of a life I am leading, but I know that I am Brahman. So all these questions will be addressed. And if I have to jump the gun and tell you, it is a matter of time. That's why I tell everybody, you are Brahman. There is a lot of discussion, this Bhamati, Vachaspati Mishra and others will say, they will come here as Purupakshi telling you that just this knowledge is not going to be enough. You will have to do Nidityasanam. Our teacher says, Shravanam alone is enough. Shravanam and Mananam, that in amount of conviction. And then you just need to give yourself time. You don't need to do any form of special meditation to get that discovery. Nidityasanam means Tat Chintanam, Tat Katanam. That's what we are doing. That is why Swami Anubhavananda again and again says, how long does it take for a wife to become a woman? Because of my vikshepa, I identify with my role play and I suffer the limitations. But I all along know I'm that. It doesn't take an instant. But Aruna, you have raised an important question. And I promise you, this will be just like the 10th man story going on for so many days. You will be answering this question for many days in many classes.
Later on also, so Amiji says it's just Shravanam, and Mananam is also part of Shravanam only. It's an integral part of Mananam, and just between clearing your doubts and doing a Shravanam, you will get this establishing yourself in the I am Brahman. And this mind part, which is, that is, you're working differently, like Dr. Divakar said, sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, that you're working on, to improve your mind, but it has nothing to do with the fact that, you're the woman and not the wife. I mean, not, that wife is just a superimposition. And the mind you can work on with all your other sadhanas, but this is separate, and you just Shravanam Mananam. I mean, it'll come now.
Sorry, I understand all that, but then I wonder about these rishis sitting for years together, for centuries, and for lives sitting in the Himalayas. What are they doing?
Maybe they didn't get a good answer.
No, it's not time pass, Nita.
No.
I mean, they are there for something. So what? We are not doing anything like that, right?
We don't have to do all that, Aruna. Really. Okay. We don't have to. Be sitting in your home, you declare and you live your life like, there is no more punarjanma for you, because you are not this body-mind. My body-mind dissociation is very clear. Whatever happens to my body happens to some body. Whatever happens to my mind happens to some mind. Whatever happens to my possessions, my family, is that dissociation I need to work on. And that comes from, that is why he says, meditation more on I am Brahman is Jagan Mithya. Mithyatvam of my family, Mithyatvam of my body, Mithyatvam of my possessions. That is why port is so important. The more I give, Swami Anubhavananda says, whatever I give a lot of importance to, that something is the cause of all my problems. So if everything that I have is mithya or fake, you have a dream possessions, dream family, dream everything. So you are real, but whatever you experience, I am someone other than whatever I experience. So
I think, Aruna, the sadhus are manifesting Kim Ichan Kasya Kamaya.
Okay.
They have nothing to do else.
No, but why would they sit there for lives together and generations together, sitting and meditating without food, water in a cave? I mean, it makes me feel very inadequate. Actually.
I think they probably did not get a guru. Sometimes, a guru...
No, they were not part of our satsang.
A guru gives you shortcuts. That is why Swami Anubhavananda says, I eat 3 times a day. I sleep, whenever I want to sleep. So this Maha Mantra that he has given us, let it be like a formula for us. They are great Maha Mantras. And when I read those, when I heard this once again, I said, my God, this is the essence of Tripti Deepa. This is it. So toward the end of Tripti Deepa, when that person comes into Tripti, our teacher, our Vidyāraṇya goes into a song. Uha, amannam, ahamannam. Yes, that song of bliss happens. Aruna, it's your turn to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hari Om, and a great pranams to all the gurus and to you, sir, for bringing us this far and till the final goal, I hope. Starting with verse 47 of the Panchadashi, chapter 7. Nivritte sarva samsare nitya muktatva bhasanat nirankusha bhave tripti punashoka samudbhavat. So, according to Swami Paramanathananda, with this verse, we come to the final stage in the 7 stages of moksha. This is the phalam. So this may be described as the moksha avastha, the phalam. In the 6th stage, all the samsaras are eliminated or overcome, hopefully. Therefore, nirvritte sarva samsare, that is, all worldly suffering, which is caused by samsara, come to an end. And exactly how does this happen? By bhasanat, by the discovery or the revelation Nitya Muktatva Bhasanat. Muktatva, or the total freedom, the state of liberation from everything, that this is moksha. This happens. Swami Paramarthananda goes to very great depths to explain the state of Muktatva as being one claimed. It is not acquired. He says that it is revealed or claimed because it is always there. It's not something which comes from somewhere outside. The Atman is always limitless and free. But what prevents it is this veil of ignorance and misconception. In the story of the 10th man, the Dashama was always there, present. He never came from somewhere else. Similarly, with aparokṣa jñāna, that is removal of ignorance, one discovers that we already are that which we wish to possess and become. Bhasanat. This is something ever evident. Therefore, a person can claim moksha. And next slide, please. Then with this moksha comes nirankusha tripti, eternal tripti, eternal ananda. Swamiji Paramarthananda says, this is your original nature. It is not acquired, it is always there. This type of ananda is also not an experiential pleasure. Like other pleasures, like we have, like maybe drinking a cup of hot tea on a rainy day like this. Experience belongs to the Anandamaya Kosha, but Tripti or Moksha is Atmananda, Jnanananda, permanent. And because of this, the Nirankusha Bhava, it will never go away. Mental conditions do not disturb the state of Tripti Ananda. Atmananda cannot be disturbed. This is like the Sthita Prajna in the Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, Punashokha, there will never be a state of sorrow. Sorrows and mental conditions will never disturb the state of Ananda Swarupa. So this is the Nirankusha Ananda, total Ananda, irrespective of Anandamaya Kosha. We are already that which we are seeking. Next slide, please. Now going on to verse 49 of the Tripti Deepa. Ayamitvam parokṣatvam muktam tadvividhat bhavet vishaya svaprakāshatva dhiyāpyevam tadikshanāt. So from verse 48 onwards, Vidyāraṇya Swami gives a very detailed description of aparokṣa jñānam, that is the direct experience. The transition from Parokṣa to Aparokṣa, or from the 4th stage to the 5th stage, is a very, very critical one. Most of us get stuck over here. Aparokṣa jñānam is the 5th stage, which leads to the 6th stage of Shoka Nivritti and the 7th stage of permanent Tripti. So focusing, next slide please. Focusing on Aparokṣa jñānam, Vidyāraṇya Swami has divided this into 2 types. Now the word ayam is used in this verse, refers to the Kutastha Atma or Brahman and its direct experience as enunciated in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad verse that we have looked at. So let us look at these 2 types of aparokṣa jñānam. The first one is the actual directness or aparokṣatva, the nature, because of the inherent nature of Brahman, its very, very nature. The second one is the understood directness of Brahman, which is understood by the intellect. Maybe go back to the previous slide, please. So let us look at the first type of aparokṣa jñānam. This jñānam is always there. Brahman is ever present, immediate, and self-evident. Vishaya or Brahman never ceases to be. That is its inherent nature, svaprakāsha. Svaprakāsha, Brahman is self-luminous. We require a light to see a pot, but the light itself requires no light to illuminate it. Like that, Brahman is self-luminous. Going back to the 10th man story, the 10th man or Dashama was always there. He didn't suddenly appear from everywhere. But this aparokṣatva or directness was always there. But due to ignorance or misconception, it gets covered in Parokṣhatva or indirect knowledge, where the person searched for the 10th man, not realizing that it was already there. Actually, even in Parokṣa jñāna, aparokṣatva is also there, but it is not understood. Parokṣa is superimposed on direct knowledge, that is aparokṣatva. Next slide, please. The second type of aparokṣa jñāna, which Swami Paramathananda has enunciated, is the understood aparokṣatva, understood by the mind and the intellect. After the Guru imparts his Mahavakya Updesha, Tattvam Asi, it's an aha moment. The mind and intellect understand the aparokṣatva. Dhiya api tadikshanat. Dhiya, with the mind, tadikshanat, one understands that I am or Brahman is self-revealing, knowledge of the consciousness of Brahman. The knowledge that self-revealing consciousness is here and I am that. That is after the Guru's Upadesh. This is the understood aparokṣa jñāna. Actual aparokṣatva gets converted into understood aparokṣatva. Once the Guru tells the 10th man that you are that, then the disciple has understood that he is that. This is the understood aparokṣatva. And this second type of aparokṣatva is the one which leads to liberation, going from Asti to Asmi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aruna. That was a very clear explanation of the two verses and the in-between verses that you included. And very clearly, see, that is why the Dashama story is so important, to understand what is this understood aparokṣatva and the self-evident that all of us are born with it, but we are not aware that we are that. Any doubts? Dr. Ambika, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In the verse 50 and 51, we discuss about the Parokṣa jñāna and the Aparokṣa jñāna and whether the Parokṣa jñāna is a jñāna or a misconception. Next slide, sir. So Swami Vidyāraṇya says the Parokṣa jñāna is the fourth stage when we listen about the Brahman. It is an avantara jñāna and this jñāna is a Parokṣa jñāna. The Brahman exists during the Parokṣa jñāna as well as at the time of Aparokṣa jñāna. Both the times, the actual directness of Brahman is common. Next slide, sir. So the Parokṣa jñāna means the remoteness and the word aparokṣatva means the proximity. In the context of Brahman, what is the meaning of Parokṣa and Aparokṣatva? So when we are discussing, so natural proximity means the Brahman is proximate to everyone. It is being one Swarupa. That is the one type of Aparokṣatva. In this verse, the expression Vishya Swaprakashatva. Next slide, sir. The second type of Aparokṣatva is that is which is recognized proximity of Brahman, Jñāta Aparokṣatva. The natural Aparokṣatva, the first Aparokṣatvam, is concealed one. Therefore, it is called the Parokṣatva. The natural Parokṣatva is not recognized due to our ignorance. That's why it's called a Parokṣa jñāna, even though it has got the natural Aparokṣatva. Next slide, sir. Only after the introduction of the Mahavakyas, the second Aparokṣatva comes into picture, and then alone we call it as Aparokṣa jñāna, which is a recognized jñāna. And hereafter, the search for the jñāna will end. Next slide, sir. Now the question comes, this Parokṣa jñāna is a jñāna only or it is a misconception? A person in Aparokṣa jñāna does not refer to as Brahman as Aham, but he says Jagat Karanam Brahman. The Brahman even exists when we talk in terms of a Parokṣa jñāna. We are not negating the Brahman. As in the case of rope and snake knowledge, the snake knowledge is ultimately negated as it's a misconception. It is a falsified. Once the light is being thrown, the snake disappears and the ropes comes into picture. But in the case of this Brahma Vidya, the Brahman is there and we are not negating it. Even in Parokṣa jñāna or in aparokṣa jñāna, the Brahman is there. The Brahman, we are not saying the Brahman is nāsti. So this Parokṣa jñāna is a jnana only and it's not a misconception. Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ambika. As you will see, any questions, please?
Ambika just said, person in aparokṣa does not refer to Brahman as aham. Is that correct? Or
No. In aparokṣa, you refer to Brahman as aham, as I.
Correct. But I
I'm
think
not sure.
the slide was on.
The slide says.
Slide says so. Okay.
Yeah.
We need to correct that.
Sir,
Ambika.
I'll correct.
Should I put it for you again? You just
Yes.
see if it's a person in aparokṣa jñāna does not refer to aparokṣa and does not refer to Brahman as aham, but says there is jagatkara. A person in parokṣa jñāna, no, it should be parokṣa jñāna, does not refer to Brahman as aham. Ambika, isn't that right?
Sir, in-
Parokṣa jñāna, because you're talking on the first line of parokṣa jñāna. Parokṣa jñāna is only, and it is a misconception.
He knows there's Brahman, but he doesn't know where.
Brahman is
That can be made one point, sir. One bullet only.
Brahman, but then he is not associating with that Brahman.
Yeah. So that is Parokṣa.
That can be made one bullet, Ambika. They're the same point. It is referring to Parokṣa only.
Okay, sir.
Remove this A and make it one bullet.
You just check your source also from where you got it. Huh? And see.
Okay, sir. I'll verify.
Very good, Rekha. You picked up. I mean,
okay.
it's nice that people are very ardently listening.
No, I was getting confused actually. I was trying to concentrate.
See, the only way is please spend a little more time listening to Swamiji's audios again and again, making your own notes until it becomes a matter of conviction. As I said, part of the preparation of this class for these verses, you will have to listen to these things the whole week. And I think it will be rewarding. So that is my request. That is why I began with port and all that. Somehow see that your responsibilities become less, that you get little more time, at least 1 hour a day for Tripti Deepa. If our discussions go beyond a certain time, attention will go on. Panaga, please.
Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Dashamaha Asti iti vibhrantam Parokṣa jñānam īkṣyate. Brahma Asti iti api tadvad syat ajñāna avaranam samam. The knowledge that Dashamaha Asti is Parokṣa jñāna, indirect knowledge to the 10th man, because it is given by a third person, even though the 10th man is always directly available to himself. By now, we all know that the directness of his existence was concealed because of ignorance. Hence, indirect knowledge of a directly available entity is required when the directly available entity is not directly understood. I'm sorry if this sounds like a tongue twister. I will repeat. Indirect knowledge of a directly available entity is required when the directly available entity is not directly understood. Similarly, the same Parokṣa jñānam is necessary for us to know that Brahma Asti. We need the Shastras and a Guru to reveal that Brahma Asti, that this world is mithya and Brahman alone is satya. In both cases of Dashamaha and Brahma, ignorance or bhāna-āvaraṇa is concealing the existence part, the sat amsha. This sattva-āvaraṇa of Brahman is removed by Parokṣa jñāna. We now know that Brahman exists, but we do not know that that Brahman is me. This is because we are not conscious of this Brahman. We have chit or bhāna-āvaraṇa. Let us learn more about Chit-āvaraṇa or Bhana-āvaraṇa in the next verse. Atma Brahma iti vakyarthe nisheshena vicharite vyaktirullikhyate iti tadvat syat dashmah tvam asi iti ataha. With Parokṣa jñāna, we know that Brahma is there, but it is a general knowledge. We know he is there somewhere. When Parokṣa jñāna is elevated to aparokṣa jñāna, then the general knowledge of Brahman's existence is converted to specific knowledge of Brahman's existence. We do not say that Brahman is existing somewhere, but the knowledge becomes specific that the same all-pervading eternal Brahman exists as me, the ever-experienced consciousness. This particularized or personified knowledge is aparokṣa jñāna, and this takes place by Mahavakya Vichara. It is stated in this verse as Atma Brahma iti Vakyarthe. Vakyarthe refers to Mahavakyarthe. This aparokṣa jñāna removes Chit-āvaraṇa. I am now conscious that Aham Brahmasmi. Next slide, sir. Vidyāraṇya Swami says that this realization can take place only when Vedanta Shravana is done properly. Only then does the clear understanding take place that I am the ever-evident, ever-free consciousness. This identification of Brahman as myself is called Vyaktirullikhyate. Identification is invoked exactly like the 10th man example. First, he was told Brahma Asti. So he was pleased with the knowledge that the 10th man exists, but he didn't know where or who was the 10th man. The 10th man has not been identified as the identity was not invoked before. But when the Guru said, Dashamaha Tvam Asi, then the identity of the 10th man is invoked. Similarly, the Mahavakya is the invocation of the identity of Brahman, that Tvam Asi. The Brahman identification process is called Mahavakya Vichara. These portions are important from another angle also to negate one of the misconceptions in Vedanta, that during Shravana we get Parokṣa jñāna or indirect knowledge of Brahman, and only when we do Nididhyasana or meditation we gain direct knowledge or the experience of Brahman. But Vidyāraṇya Swami negates this and says both indirect knowledge and direct knowledge have to take place in Shravana only. With Parokṣa jñāna, the 10th man knows that the 10th man exists. To know that he only is the 10th man, he needed the Guru to tell him that Dashamaha Tvam Asi. Similarly, in the case of Brahman, we need our Shastras and our Guru to tell us that Tvam Asi. Therefore, this conviction of Aham Brahmasmi should take place in Shravana, specifically Mahavakya Shravana. Therefore, we should not do meditation for some mystical Brahma Anubhava, but to assimilate and claim the direct knowledge of the Mahavakya. Next slide, sir. To summarize, Parokṣa jñāna removes sattva-āvaraṇa and aparokṣa jñāna removes chit or bhāna-āvaraṇa. To put it very simply, we can know the existence of something indirectly, but consciousness is always direct. We cannot be indirectly conscious of anything. Also, let us remember that Sat and Chit are not two parts of Brahman, but they are necessary from the point of view of the world, which is Mithya and Jada. So from the Mithya aspect, we need to identify Brahman as Sat, and from the Jada aspect, we have to identify Brahman as Chit. Just like day and night are two parts of our time as viewed from the earth. There is no day and night from the sun's standpoint. Finally, Nididhyasana must be practiced to assimilate and claim the Mahavakya Vichara, Aham Brahma Asmi. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Panaga. Both you and all our speakers have been very clear in trying to explain something that is really difficult. I would like to make one point here, which was inspired by listening to Panaga. When you listen to any of the sources of information, which are called pramanas, Shabda Pramana, that we go to Wikipedia or internet to get information, you will get two kinds of sources of knowledge. One is called words of information, and the other words is called words of introduction. For example, the Shastras, both Avantara and Mahavakya, that means all the words of the Upanishads, are words of introduction more than words of information. I will give you an example which I have heard directly from Swami Dayananda himself. Swami Paramatmananda has quoted it in his talks. Swami Dayananda was traveling from Chennai to Delhi on an economy class, and next to him was a foreign passenger who was a little big in size, and he was bulging beyond his seat. And after some time, you get into a conversation and asks, where are you going? And the person said, I'm going to Rishikesh. And then Swamiji asked, so you're going to Rishikesh to meet whom? He says, I do not know his name, but I have got a piece of paper. And then he opened that and he said, and he showed it, Swami Dayananda Saraswati Purana Jadi Rishikesh. Now, Swami Dayananda, it is the one he was looking for was next to him. Now, Panaga was saying, see, we have experience of Brahman in the sense that I am conscious. Because I'm conscious, I'm able to speak. Because you are conscious, you're able to listen. But this consciousness in me, I do not know is Brahman, I do not know is Atma, I do not know is infinite, I do not know it is Purnamada, Purnamidam. Now the teacher will tell you that consciousness is words of introduction. Now that man had experience, I also had experience, but I do not know, the Shastric way of introduction. Now once Swamiji says that the one that you are looking for is the one that you are experiencing directly now. Now, suddenly, can you see the shift that has happened? Now, what he has got now, he had the information, but he did not have introduction. Tripti Deepa is a text that will help you, giving you not more information, but introduction. But if you have doubts, then the Purva Pakshi will come and ask you all these questions. Few minutes, 1 minute or few minutes before we go to our favorite Gita verse by Ambika. Any point on discussion?
Doctor, I have one question. Several speakers, several teachers have quoted about understanding and experiencing realizations and all these words. I'm kind of, when you really understand, keep listening and the knowledge gets actually into you. How would you call it? Is it an experience, or is it an understanding, or is it a realization? What is that? In English, I don't really know, but that's the kind of thing I'm trying to understand.
Swamiji says, have a clear understanding. All that we need is clear understanding that I don't need anything else in this life other than clear understanding of my true nature. That's it, period. I will repeat and I will quote Swamiji in the next class, exactly getting his words. All our spiritual journey, there is no question of some bombastic realization. It is not suddenly that there is a halo around us, or when you walk around that, the grass suddenly becomes green. Nothing like that happens. There is nothing earth-shaking that happens. But it is an understanding that consciousness principle which is there within us is something of the nature of infinite, and that is the real me, and let that be a nishta. The more I understand that, then let this body-mind fade into relative insignificance. Be grateful to this body-mind for having given you that vision. along with the body mind goes away, your family, your money, your possessions, all that becomes less and less important. But all we need, Sri Narayan sir, is this, that we need clear understanding of this. It is not realization. Let us not get into spiritual enlightenment. Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, Aham Brahma Asmi. This is all that we need to be. Through this satsang, let us get a very clear understanding about all that. We are
Thank
here.
you.
Shall we go to the last talk today, my favorite Gita verse, and after that we can have a few minutes for interaction. Ambika, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Next slide, sir. Back first slide. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukrita dushkrite tasmat yogaya yujjasva yoga karma sukaushalam. One who is endowed with samatva, buddhi, the sameness of mind, gave up both punya and papa here in this world. Therefore, commit to karma yoga. Karma yoga is discretion in action. Next slide, sir. We must use a discretion, kaushala. How are we going to use? Kaushala is a capacity to interpret correctly. Person should have a right attitude. The karma can lead to the bondage. It can lead to a trap in samsara. And the same karma, if it is done by a karma yogi, can lead to the liberation. When a person interprets according to the values, dharma, he is not in the hands of raga and dvesha. He is beyond attachment and aversion. How we are going to get beyond raga and dvesha? We have to have an Ishwan Arpana Buddhya. So when we have an Ishwan Arpan Buddhya, we are going to accept the results or the outcome of our action as a prasada buddhi. We are not going to have an attachment and aversion with the result. As a result, our chitta shuddhi will happen and yoga will happen in our action. Next slide, sir. So how a person can manage one's life successfully, skillfully, and efficiently? First, he has to have an understanding of the external. He has to have an understanding that whatever we are experiencing is not eternal. We will have ups and downs. Second, knowing the self and the Ishvara. And third, living one's lives with the values according to the dharma. Once we are able to assimilate this, the discretion in actions will happen. It will be a natural, and a person will become yogi. Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much. Normally, I would have continued, but as I said, we still have a few minutes for discussion. Satsang will take for 90 minutes, our regular presentation for 60 minutes. We are at 1 hour. Any questions, please?
Can I ask something, sir? Sir, you were saying about two sources of knowledge, one through information, the other through introduction. Both are through sense organs only, no? You, Parokṣa jñāna only?
Both are through Shabda Pramana. Both are through our regular sense organs only. So, but Shastra Pramana, we have to take it as words of introduction. So be very sensitive. Then we don't need more information. Of course, there will be some information to clarify our doubts, because when somebody says you are that, doubts will still be there. And Karna's told you are that. But then Kunti had to give a long story to say, how can you be that? Just like Aruna said, today, how when somebody says you are that, but then what has happened? Brahma Asti, I know, Brahma Asmi also I know, but still nothing has happened. But I will only say, wait for something, let the understanding deepen.
This result, like to realize Brahma Asmi, this transformation, I think it happens without your knowledge. Like it's not like a goal that you can look forward. It's the way you handle the world and your life, no?
Yes, Vani.
So Nididhyasanam is just the fading away of, our involvement with the body-mind complex.
One
Right?
aspect, one important aspect. Yes, Dr. Sandhya. Nididhyasanam should be more for fading away our body identification, because we have, for years and janmas, we've had strong body identification. So this body identification has to be worked out through Nididhyasana.
And just going back to Aruna's observation of the yogis meditating in caves, maybe they're just working on this aspect of disidentifying with their bodies.
I know it's not so easy as it is said, but it is also as easy also. See, that's why invoke the grace of Lord, invoke the grace of Guru, invoke the grace of Shastra, and I'm very, very hopeful that we will have, this understanding becoming a nishta. Jnanam becomes a jnana nishta. This choice of this thing is so beautiful. Buddhi yukto jahatita te sukrute duskrute. The real skill comes in understanding that, when you understand that you are not doing anything, you allow things to happen. The real skill is when you integrate spiritual wisdom into your day-to-day action. Tasmad yogaya yujjase yogaha karmasu kausala. Anyway, this is very closely related to our Tripti Deepa also. Good choice.
If I may add one more point.
Please, Dr. Divakar. Go ahead.
Hari Om, sir.
Go ahead. Kulkarni sir, go ahead.
After the clear understanding by the mind and intellect, we will be in the Asti level only, not Asmi. We will be in a Brahma Asti, not Asmi, Brahma Asmi.
So what should we do for Brahma Asmi?
And what is the spiritual journey from that Asti?
So what is your suggestion, sir? From here on, after getting Brahma knowledge, what should we do for Brahma Asti to Brahma Asmi?
What is the spiritual journey? I'm asking.
What sadhana do we need to do? See, now I know I am Brahman. Okay. Now, but from Brahma Asti to Brahma Asmi, is there any other exercises or sadhana that we need to do?
Sadhana Chatushtaya something.
Not required.
It's only Nididhyasanam.
Only Nididhyasanam.
Internalization. Intuitive leap outside the mind.
Sir, shall I tell you? Shall I?
Please.
Sir, as you always say, fake it before you make it. So you start claiming that I am Brahman. After knowing Brahman, start claiming every point that I am Brahman. And then one day you will understand it.
It helps. That also helps.
Possible.
So as per what Vidyāraṇya is saying, and as per the translations of the teacher, he's saying Shravana Mananam is what is important. All your doubts, small doubts, so that we can subconsciously we can swallow the idea that I am that infinite Brahman. We have to continue to do these, that is why this Purva Pakshi and this question answer back and forth is being brought up, because somewhere there is a doubt, and that's why we're not able to swallow this idea. And once we do this again and again, Shravana Mananam is what, in this text, in this chapter, Swamiji says again and again that we just need to do that. Nididhyasanam is for removing the, the mind, making the mind purer, so that we can reflect that.
Divakar, please. Divakar, you wanted to say something?
And the point of yogi is going to different places, Himalayas. I think it can be understood using pravritti and nivritti marga.
Every day-to-day life.
So, pravritti and nivritti marga, which is clearly mentioned as paths for its own discovery of self.
Your audio is not clear. Your audio is not clear, Dr. Divakar.
Am I audible now?
Come again.
Am I audible? I think.
Yes, audible.
Interface from other. things. So I was thinking that people who go to Himalayas or any other secluded places, can we understand it by the Bhagavad Gita's, teachings on pravritti and nivritti marga? We all are in the pravritti marga, and some of the sadhakas choose nivritti marga.
We are
Yeah,
following
we'll call it,
both, I felt.
Vidya, we'll call that as time pass. See, once you have got it, what else to do? As we'll go back to Swami Anubhavananda's time pass mantra. Kulkarni avre, any other points you wanted to say?
No. Thank you, sir.
Hari Om, sir. One point I want to just to say whether it is okay. See,
Please
to
go
be
ahead.
in the Brahmanistha, Tat Kathanam, Tat Chintanam. It should be happening every moment, is it not, sir?
Very important.
Brahmanistha.
Very important. From now on, our sadhana should be that. In, I think, verse 106 of this, it will come. Tat chintanam, tat kathanam, anyon tat prabodhanam. What exactly we are doing is anyon tat, sharing our understanding with each other. Ekat eva pratakena. I mean, other than that, this is what is called viduhu buddhaha. Wise people say this is nidithyasana. So that means we don't have to sit under a tree like those people did. If you want to sit under the tree and do it also, you can do. Neeta, can we conclude today's class?
If God is within us, then how do you explain about the God's grace? Every day it happens, no? Like,
all right.
in what
Dora,
context of life?
yeah. Now, whenever we say God in Vedanta, we mean many things. So when we say God's grace, we are looking at the grace of Ishvara. Ishvara. And when you say God, see, God can be devas, God can be sense organs, but let us be very clear about what you mean by God. Now, when I ask for God's grace, I'm looking at Ishvara. Ishvara is a combination of Brahman and Maya, who's all powerful, and that is whose grace we take when we start this class and we conclude that class, although we know that is also Nitya. When we say, I am Brahman, then we refer to the Atma Tattva in me, which is the essence. Maybe in the next class, I will bring about a little more clarification about what you have raised, Lola. Shall we conclude this class? Neeta, please.
Thank you, Ambika, for a sincere presentation of your favorite verse of Bhagavad Gita. Thank you, Dr. Hegde, and all the speakers. Huge learning. We have to go back to the study table and recap our learnings for ourselves. This hard work will pay off, let me assure you. This is the best sadhana we can do right now at this stage. Aikyam will be clearly understood. Problems of the mind like raga dvesha can be handled separately. For better understanding of this text, we must become familiar with a lot of these terms: kutastha, chidabhasa, parokṣa, aparokṣa, bhāna-āvaraṇa, sattva-āvaraṇa. We must be familiar with the 10th man story, understanding the comparisons of the 7th stage to our spiritual life, from ignorance to self-realization. We meet on Saturday, for the recording of the same verses. This session will be on YouTube on the 14th of August. And for the 15th July session on Saturday, we won't allow interruptions between the recording, but you can ask your questions at the end of the session. Please do come. This will be repeat class and it will help us revise and clear our doubts. Thank you. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.